Welcome to the WordyGirl Entertainment Podcast. I am your writer-in-chief, Rosalind Jackson. I am a lover of words, and that love led me to a passion for writing. And what's the next best thing to writing? Talking about writing. So kick back and join me for mind-blowing chats about writing, covering everything from screenplays to novels to poetry, from nonfiction books to songwriting, and much more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I have an exciting interview for you guys today. It's with television screenwriter, Kelly Edwards, and she is a former development executive turned screenwriter for television. So that's very rare to go from an executive to a screenwriter. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear all about that, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So I wanted to chat with you guys first about a couple of things that I am up to. One is getting back on track with this podcast. I know I always say I'm falling off, and I do, and I'm trying to get better and be consistent at that. And it's a struggle, and I know my fellow writers out there know what I'm talking about. But some of you guys are on top of your game. You meet your deadlines, you crank out the work every day, and that is a beautiful thing. And I'm trying to get there, and I need you guys to help me get there. And it's just got to do it. Got to do it. Got to quit procrastinating. And so I wanted to tell you guys about these script consulting services that I have coming up. They are going to be small classes on Zoom. It'll be like either a workshop setting or one-on-one. You have the option of one-on-one classes. So it'll be things like what I'm calling Pick My Brain workshop, question and answer. And it'll be a small gathering of us on Zoom where you just get to pick my brain. Everybody can throw their questions out there and I'll answer them and give you a little insight of what's going on in the business and how you can get in and work your way around and just basically get your foot in the door. So it'll be a workshop like that. Another one is called Rosalind Fix My Logline Workshop. And again, we'll work on everybody's log line. You'll submit the log line ahead of time, and then you can also submit questions ahead of time, and you can submit questions during the workshop. But basically, we'll work on everyone's log line there in the class and find ways to make it stronger so that you can get Hollywood's attention and make them want to buy your script. We hope. Fingers crossed. Let's see, what else will I be having? Another one will be a workshop for working on a pitch deck. And I'll go through the steps of what's needed in a pitch deck. And I'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to build a pitch deck that looks amazing, grabs the attention of, executives and producers and other writers. So that will be another workshop. Another consultation will be the one-on-one script development, where we will go over your script. You'll send it to me ahead of time, and I'll read it over, and we'll go over it on the call, and we can discuss things like log lines, structure, dialogue, action lines, character development, everything. And that's your time again to pick my brain, but it's just you and I, so you get a lot more time, and you get my verbal notes about your project. And another course, well, it's not actually a course, this is a service that I will provide, which is creating a deck for you. You'll give me the bones of your script, or the bones of your information that goes in your deck, such as your log line and synopsis and your character descriptions, your season arcs, things like that. And then I will work on the visuals for it and make it really eye-catching and great to look at and things like that. So, but if you want to go further with me also creating things like, your logline, your synopsis, that's a different stage. So that's more detailed, and that one will cost more money. So these are ranging anywhere from the courses with other people. Those are ranging in the $100 area, and the one-on-ones are around 500. So I'll have those coming up. I'm working on putting them together now, and so they should be finished within the next week or so and ready for purchase. But I have some existing script consultation services available on my website. You can check those out at WordyGirlEnt.com. So if you go on there and look under the tab script consulting, you'll see what I offer there. And that's ready to go right now. And for those who didn't know, I have a poetry book. It's called Musings of a Wordy Girl. And you can find it on Amazon.com and just type in Musings of a Wordy Girl. It should pop up. Or you could type in my name, Rosalind Jackson, and it should come up for you. Yes, a little collection of haiku poems that I wrote. And it's a couple of regular poems in there, but majority of the poems are haiku, which happens to be my favorite form of poetry. So yeah, if you can check that out if you love poetry. What else? And it will make a great Christmas gift. So, you can get that for your loved ones. Let's see, what else is going on? Just watching television, catching up on things I missed, or also watching all the new shows that have been out for a while, for the last few weeks or so. One show that I finished was You on Netflix. That was really good. The ending really pissed me off in a good way. I won't say what it was. I won't do any spoilers, but I was just pissed off with the people at the end. I'm just like, oh my God. They get on my nerves, but I love the show. Let's see, what else am I watching? Of course, Our Kind of People, but we'll get into that later. What else am I watching? Make sure you guys are watching Games People Play. Yes, I am hyping up our own show. I am a co-producer on Games People Play, and I might be a little biased, but I like the show. It's great. It's juicy this season, and they got a lot of craziness going on, lots of juicy drama. So tune in to Games People Play. It comes on Tuesday nights on BET, 10/9 Central. So that's 10 Eastern, 9 Central. And also that'd also be 10 o'clock West Coast. So get in there. Check your listings. Okay, because don't have me giving you the wrong information, but 10/9 Central. Okay, and you go from there. Okay. Let's see, what else do I have going on? Of course, working on my writing. Got to get things finished before the end of the year. So I have a couple of stories that I've been working on, and I just need to polish them and finish them off, so I can get my stuff out there and I can do like Kelly Edwards, go from executive to a writer. So that's exactly what I'm planning to do. So that's why I connected with her story so much, because I'm like, ooh, I want to do the same thing you did. Okay, so yeah, that's about it for me. Also speaking of merchandise, I also sell t-shirts and mugs and things like that. My t-shirts feature my poetry, my haiku poems. So if you go on my website, you can see the T-shirts that I have, and the mugs have the poetry on there too. I have some decorative pillows that have photography on them. I took the pictures and turned the pictures into watercolor images, like digital watercolor images. So, like my favorite one I have on there is a picture of the the Los Angeles downtown cityscape. Like I love a cityscape, so I turned that into a decorative pillow. So it looks so cute. And on the back of it is just script writing, not like a screenplay, but cursive writing, I'll say. Um, so yeah, go on there and check out my merchandise. Black Friday is coming up. Get your shop on. Or if you want to wait until Cyber Monday, you could do that too. I don't care when you do it. Just, if you want to shop, you just shop. And, I'm not going to be mad at you, of course. Cha-ching! No. But yeah, that's all that's going on with me. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview with Kelly Edwards. Like I said, she is a former development executive. She worked at places like um, NBC, USA, Bravo, Telemundo, Sci-Fi. She's been with Fox, UPN. She's been like every company you can think of, she's been there. So, and she also ran a diversity program that helped, people of color make it into key positions in the business. Um, so that we really need that, okay? Do we not? So yeah, so she is amazing, and she also wrote a book, and it's called The Executive Chair, and she gives advice to people who want to make it as television writers. So we'll get into that in detail. And she also has a first look deal with HBO under her company, which is called Edwardian Pictures. So she is doing her thing. So yeah, let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the WordyGirl Entertainment Podcast. Today we are speaking with Kelly Edwards. Welcome to the WordyGirl Entertainment Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being on here. So, let's just jump right in and talk about your background as a television film development executive and what development is.
Sure. Well, I started in this business quite a while ago,
Mm.
over 30 years ago, and I came through the assistant ranks like most people do and found myself on the feature side primarily, and then moved over to television as when I was already an executive. So I had a little bit of feature film executive work under my belt, and then moved over as a manager of comedy development for Fox. And that was at a time when Fox was going from 4 to 7 nights a week. So it was in its very early years there. And then after working there for about 5 or 6 years, I moved over to head up comedy development for UPN. And again, that was a fledgling network at the time. And of course, now it's the CW because it merged with the WB.
Mhm.
And after I had quite a few years as an executive uh, to launch my career off of, I rolled into a producing deal under the Paramount Studios banner, and I partnered up with a guy named Jonathan Axelrod, and together we were out there selling, and it was a really vital part of my um, I'm going to say the broadening out of my resume, because I had never sold before. I'd always been on the buying side and never had the chance to really get in the trenches with writers. And it was something that I'd always wanted to do, was to really get, kind of dirty with the material
Mhm.
and work on the project from the ground up.
Mhm.
When you're a development executive on the buying side, there's a little bit of a separation between you and the writer. You're not there day to day. You're not working on the pitch. You're listening to the pitch and working on the show once it goes into development. But there was that, I always really wanted to have a closer connection to the material. And it always looked like fun.
Hmm.
I realized once I got onto that side that it's a lot of work. It's not always fun and games. There's a
Hmm.
lot of pressure to sell.
Hmm.
But I worked with Jonathan for about 6 years, and we had a show on the air on UPN. We sold a lot of projects that didn't move forward. And then um, around 2007, Jonathan decided to go work more in politics, and we shuttered our company. And I was looking around for the next thing to do, and I realized that I really wanted to um, take a break. You know, the selling side is so exhausting, and after our last year of selling, when we didn't get anything on the air,
Hmm.
when I went home, I guess it was maybe in that January when, when all the scripts get picked up or don't get picked up. I went home and sat on my sofa for about a month, literally so exhausted,
Oh, wow.
because it just takes everything out of you. You're
Hmm.
always on the go. You're always moving forward. And unlike now where, people sell on Zoom and you can sell from in your pajamas, then you were going physically going to every network. You were in the office, and so it was, sort of taking your wares from, ABC to NBC to, it was just, it's it's a grind.
Hmm.
So I decided that I needed a job, but I didn't want to do what I had done before. I wanted to do something brand new. And I literally had an Oprah moment, I call it. I was sitting in my office and we were boxing up everything in the office. This was a Monday. And I said to no one in particular, and I don't even know why I said it out loud, because it's not like I talk to myself out loud all the time. Um, I said, I don't know where I'm going, but I know that I want to take all of the skills that I've accumulated in the past and I want to use them in a new way.
Okay.
That Tuesday, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who works in NBC, and he said, "Hey, do you want to interview for this job?
Hmm.
It's in diversity." And by then, it was, I wasn't really all that familiar with diversity efforts. It wasn't like it was, tremendously on my radar. They had only started about 7 years before.
Hmm.
And most of the people who had worked in diversity before my generation were people who came out of HR and news and things like that. So it wasn't really, didn't really consider it on the creative side.
Hmm.
So I said, sure, I'll interview. So I go in and interview that Thursday at 10 a.m. and uh, and by 11:45 I had a job.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was awesome. It was awesome. And so I was there for about 6 years
Mhm.
and oversaw the diversity efforts for NBC Universal's television groups, which there were 20 of them. You wouldn't think that there would be 20, but there were 20 different entities, and that included, they called some of their digital platforms networks as well.
Okay.
So we had Swirl and Fandango and Daily Candy, and those were considered networks. But then we also had Sci-Fi, Telemundo,
Hmm.
NBC, all of the USA, all of those actual networks.
Hmm.
And then after about 6 7 years, there was a big takeover. Comcast took over the company from GE, and I went to work for HBO and built their diversity programs from the ground up. And that was a writers program, the directors program. We had a cinematographers program. We have a lot of programs that were generated in order to bolster diversity
Hmm.
behind the camera. And then I just rolled out of there about a year ago, just over a year ago, into a writing deal. So I have a first look deal with HBO, and then this past May, I got staffed on a show. So the show that I'm on is called Our Kind of People, and
Yes.
it's Tuesday nights at 9 on Fox. So
Yeah.
hopefully you see it.
Yes, and I'm
And
excited to talk about that.
Good, good,
But
good.
go ahead.
And then I was going to say, at the same time that I rolled out of HBO last year, I also got a deal to write a book, and the
Mm,
book just came out last week.
mm. Oh, congratulations on the book, by the way.
Thank you. It's called The Executive Chair, in case anybody wants to look it up. And what's funny is that originally, when you put in Executive Chair on Amazon,
Uh-huh.
there would be a lot of office chairs would come up, and so I had
That's
to put in
exactly what happened when
executive.
I looked. I was like, wait a
Yeah,
minute, I don't want to buy any chairs.
right,
I want the
exactly.
book.
Right.
I did look
The
it up and
title
I
was not my choice. It was
did.
the publisher's choice, and I kept thinking, well, let's put the if you're going to have a chair, let's put the chair on the book. And they were like, no, we think your photo's better. So there were quite a few little battles about, what it looked like. I was not interested in having my face to be the face of this book, but they're like, no, 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 you look so warm and inviting. And I'm like, oh, it's aggravating. But I'm glad the book's out there. It was a labor of love. It was, a full year in the making, and hopefully it delivers some good information for people who want to get into the business.
Yeah, not, and I did purchase it, but it didn't arrive here on time before the interview.
Ah, no problem. I have all the secrets inside. I can tell you
Right.
anything you want to know.
So tell us like what actually development is for people who don't know.
Okay, so in order for anything to get to the finish line, a piece of material that you've seen on television or film, every project goes through the development phase, which means it goes from idea to full on piece of content. And that is comprised of a number of different components. It's the coming up with the idea, it's pitching the idea, it's once you've gotten the deal, it's working on that project to make the script the best it can be with a either producer or producer studio network. So there's a process by which, all of the rough edges are smoothed out, all of the character dynamics are worked out. We look at, is there a show here that can go for multiple seasons? Or is it maybe a film idea instead? But it goes through this whole process of working the material and making it the best it can possibly be. So that's development. And now people also call it sometimes development hell, which just means that it can go on for forever. It could be
Right,
endless amounts of notes. There
right.
can be disagreements about the project.
Mhm,
The project can fall apart.
mhm.
But for the most part, the goal is to get whatever this idea is through the gauntlet,
Mhm.
and on the other side, a much better piece of material that someone wants to program.
Right. Yeah. The development hell part of it, nobody likes, whether it's the writer, the producers, or anybody like that. I tend to find that it seems like to me the writers hate it the most because they're the ones that's trying to, get their project on the air. They want it to be seen.
Sure.
And I also it feels like sometimes they hate the notes part of development hell where you're like, boy,
Sure.
back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with notes. That's been like my experience. What they
Yeah, I think
come
it's development hell is bad for everybody. I think when you think
up.
about the producer who's putting effort into it, and the producer doesn't get paid until something gets sold.
Right.
So development hell for a producer is also hell.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to make the best project possible,
Mhm.
and no one wants it to stall, but sometimes there are misunderstandings about what the project is, or maybe there's a piece of talent who wants to that you're trying to put, into the project to make it a little bit better.
Mhm.
um, and so that it's just there are so many different factors that go into why something will not move forward
Mhm.
with the kind of pace that everybody wants. And then on the network side too, I say this in the book, and pretty early on in the book, development executives get a bad rap because they're known for gumming up the works, but that's not the goal. And a good development executive can actually see past and shepherd a project through some of those stumbling blocks,
Mhm.
and really be an advocate for projects. So I think if you think back to a lot of the great pieces of work that have come out, sometimes there is somebody on the inside who are pulling the strings and who are advocating in the room and who are pushing for a
Mhm.
piece of material to go forward. So you just never know. You never know who's got the projects back and who really sees it through. There's a there's so many stories out there about people who've championed
Mhm.
projects, and you just don't see them and you don't hear about them. It's not like people are out there talking about that. They're not interviewing a lot of executives. They're interviewing
Right.
the writers, and the writers who win Emmys, and the writers almost never say thank you to the network executives. Every
Right.
now and again they do. I think at HBO they do quite a bit, but if you remember that HBO is also the producer and there's a studio and the network.
Mhm.
But for the most part, people, when they are getting those or giving those accolades, they're mentioning the people who have been in the trenches with them. They
Mhm.
don't mention the executives who may have helped them along the way as well. So
Right. Yeah.
I'm standing up for the executive right now. Like, come on, they're
Exactly.
not all bad.
Exactly.
Sometimes we're stupid, sometimes we're not,
Yeah,
but
we
you
do
just
get
never
the
know.
we do get the bad rap sometimes.
Correct.
Like, oh, they're messing
Correct.
up my work.
Unwarranted.
Yeah, they're
And
like,
sometimes very warranted.
mhm, true.
Sometimes you get people who are just don't really understand
Hmm.
the what the goal is. And I think sometimes it does come down to, how's the writer truly articulated well
Hmm.
what what they're trying to do,
Hmm.
and sometimes you got to really make sure that you're on the same page.
Right. Right. And being that you do have the development executive background, but you're also a writer, do you think being a writer makes you a better development person or producer?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think because I started out, when I said that I started out in some assistant roles,
Mhm.
I started out working for, there were a couple of jobs that I had before this job, but the one that was really impactful was I worked for a couple of executive producers who were in development for a
Oh,
few years, and they got things on the air. So they had a show on CBS, they got a pilot at NBC, and then we worked with some amazing pieces of talent.
mhm.
And so I got to see the whole process and then see the production part of it. So I understood when we were getting a note, what the note meant for the writer's room, what was doable, what wasn't doable, were we being pushed off track, were, what they fought for. So there was a lot of things that I got to see, not only from being a part of that writing process and typing all those scripts and
Mhm.
all of that, but also being in production, because then you can see it, where the rubber hits the road. And, you know, are you being asked to do a page one rewrite overnight,
Mhm.
which is virtually impossible? And is it giving you a better product, or is it not giving you a better product? So when
Right.
I came to being an executive, I had a little bit more information than I think other people who haven't been through production and development on the writer side, that they probably didn't have. And I do say, I think every executive should write a script. They
Mhm.
should understand the process. They should understand what production is like. It just makes you a better, more well-rounded, and I think kinder
Mhm.
executive. And I think because I had that experience and knew what it took to build a pitch,
Mhm.
I do feel as though I was maybe a little kinder in the room than some of my counterparts who didn't understand that process. It takes a lot of work just to take in the worst pitch.
Mhm.
It's hours and hours and hours. And so, and it's people's livelihoods on the line. It's the difference between them maybe being able to stay in their home
Right.
or have their health insurance. And so there's a lot of anxiety that goes on with, just internally before you're sitting down to pitch, because every sale is a very valuable commodity. And
Absolutely.
it's just harder and harder these days to sell something, I think for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's not an easy process for sure.
So since you have the writing and producing deal through HBO, like tell us how that all works for people who are not familiar of how that all is set up.
Sure. Well, I have a first look deal which is different from from an overall deal. So somebody who has an overall deal has gets a lot of money to so they can build a staff, they can develop multiple projects, they can option IP. It's a usually a multi-year deal with just a lot of infrastructure attached to it. I
Mhm.
have what's called a first look deal, which means I have the good news is I have the ability to take a project to HBO or HBO Max, and if they like it, then we go into development, and you know, and yay. But if they pass on it because it's probably not for them or for whatever reason, then I because it's a first look, I can then take it someplace else.
Mhm.
So I get flexibility, whereas an overall deal probably doesn't get the same kind of flexibility.
Mhm.
Usually, an overall deal is like, well, if they don't like it, then too bad. But I also have the flexibility on my. It's just for TV. It's not for features. So if I want to pitch a feature, I can go wherever I want. I can go straight to HBO Max if I'd like to, or I can go someplace else.
Mhm.
So that gives me flexibility. It's not
Mhm.
nearly as much money.
Mhm.
It's really just a fraction, but it's a wonderful way to start your writing career when you've been an executive for
Right.
30 years.
Right.
I'm not sneezing at that at all. It's really great.
Let's talk a little bit more about your book. So, what made you want to go from being an executive to being a writer on a TV show?
Well, I think the plan had been when I was way back when starting my career, I wanted to be a writer then,
Mhm.
but the world wasn't really in the same place that it is now.
Mhm.
So I was a young wannabe,
Mhm.
um, working as a writer's assistant.
Mhm.
And when I looked around the industry at the time, I wasn't seeing a lot of brown female faces in any writer's room. And
Mhm.
the writer's room that I was working with, I was the assistant to the executive producer. I was not in the room. And I want to say the entire writing staff was white men. And what was interesting is that the show itself was about two Latino men. So
Oh.
you kind of go, that wouldn't ever fly today.
Mhm.
But it was sort of par for the course then. And I looked around and I thought, well, if I can't get in a writer's room, and I can't even get in the writer's room of the folks that I'm working for, where I'm pitching jokes and getting jokes in,
Mhm.
um, I'm I'm kind of doomed. My prospects are looking pretty weak at that point. But
Mhm.
I knew that I loved working with material, and I had been the whole time that I'd been in Hollywood. I had a second job, which
Mhm.
was as a reader, and I read for New Line Cinema. I read for Michael Nesmith had a company. I want to say it was called Pacific something or another. Anyway, there were a couple companies that I was working for freelance because I needed the extra income, and I knew that I gave great uh, coverage and great notes. And
Mhm.
I took some classes at UCLA, and I was honing my skills as how do you give really good, insightful coverage. And I was reading as much as I could, and I was watching as many movies and TV shows as I possibly could. So I was really studying that, and so I realized that the other way that I can be a part of this system
Mhm.
is to take all of that and become go on the executive side.
Mhm.
And so I think it's all part of the same ecosystem. It's all part of the same organism, right? So whether you're giving notes or you're getting notes, you're
Mhm.
writing the script or you're producing the script, you are still a creative person,
Right.
and every part of this is valuable. So
Mhm.
I honed my writing skills through development,
Mhm.
and then at the same time, the entire time I was taking writing classes. So
Mhm.
I took a class at Stanford online, of course. One at UCLA, a couple at UCLA. I took a groundlings class. I took one that was there's this guy named Bill Idelson taught
Mhm.
years ago, and so I was always honing my skills
Mhm.
because I wanted to be better for other people.
Mhm.
And then I didn't realize that I was also still harboring this other desire. It really went dormant for a while in terms of my my psyche. I wasn't actively pursuing a writing career.
Mm-hmm.
I was writing for pleasure. I was writing for myself. So I wrote a bunch of short stories that I was posting on Facebook and people really loved. It was about this was back in 2015. I had given up my car because I could not stand driving in Los Angeles one more minute. And I was white knuckling it to HBO and back. And my commute was an hour and a half
Mm-hmm.
just in a car each way. And I said, okay, I'm giving this up because I'm at my wit's end.
Mm-hmm.
And that year that I wrote about giving up my car was the year I was posting all of these stories on Facebook and
Mm-hmm.
people were responding. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't really realize that I had something valuable to say. You know, when I was writing before, when I was really young and I was in my 20s, I was an idiot. What the things that I wrote then, they were terrible. They were very, gimmicky and high concept. And, I loved screwball comedies. So they were screwball comedies and they weren't really of me and my soul and who I was as a person. They
Mm-hmm.
were outside of that. And I gave it up willingly at that time because I thought, well, I didn't see that I didn't understand the process. And then I think I had to go on this journey of really dissecting and understanding the process so that I could teach other people
Mm-hmm.
until I got to a point where I knew how to do it for myself. So I can see a transition in my writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a lot of short stories for myself. And then I started to do some short pieces. And then the thing that really busted this whole Megillah open was I filed for divorce in 2015. And in 2016, I had a year of yes. And I did a lot of crazy stuff. And one of the things that I did, and this might have been actually in the top of 2017, I'm not quite sure, but my year of yes turned into 5 years of yes. But
Ah.
one of the things that I did was I did an ayahuasca trip, and then a couple of weeks later ended up dreaming an entire screenplay, start to
Oh.
finish, casting and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I transcribed it, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, this is a TV show," and I reworked it and sent it to Sundance and got into Sundance
Wow.
and got into a MFA program at the same time. So I had this, I don't know, it was just sort of following my bliss at that point.
All right.
So that when it came time for me to make a decision about staying on for another year or a couple years and re-upping in a new contract at HBO, I was incredibly clear about it. I knew that I had not been living my truth, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I needed to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And so far so good. And I also feel like if let's just say everything blew up tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly everything was, it was terrible and I had to go get a regular 9 to 5 job. This last year would have been worth it. Would have been worth everything.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been worth just jumping off the bridge and into the abyss has been the most amazing, phenomenal, life-changing,
Mm-hmm.
joyous time of my life.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like I'm good. Like hopefully the ride goes longer than this. But I mean, I really do feel like I've been blessed this last year
Mm-hmm.
to just write every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little fanatical about it because I don't feel like there are enough hours in the day. I
Right.
feel like I just want to stay up for 25 hours a day and just talk to these characters who are talking to me in my head. But, you know,
Mhm, mhm. Well, I need some of that to rub off on me. 'Cause I'm always procrastinating with my writing and stuff. So I need to get on that.
right,
Because
right. You
I'm on
do.
the development side, but I'm more so want to be on the writing side also. So we have
Good.
that in common. So but give us an overview of your book and tell us what people can expect to take away from it.
Sure. Well, the book is called The Executive Chair, A Writer's Guide to TV Series Development. And the reason that I wrote this particular book is that I had 30 plus years of sitting in the executive chair and looking at the process and thinking to myself, it doesn't have to be this hard for everybody. Why
Mm.
are we not telling everyone just some of the little tricks and keys and interesting stuff that we know that we as executives, it's almost like it's this open secret,
Mhm.
and it's not by design. I don't think anybody genuinely wants to not tell people how to make a better pitch, but I think we take it for granted.
Mhm.
And the people who come in the door who are a little bit more polished
Mhm.
automatically get to the head of the class.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, as I'm running all these programs, and I'm looking at the gatekeepers, and who's allowed to tell stories and who's not allowed to tell stories. And of course, I'm a woman of color, and I look at all of the inequities, and I think, well, we need young people, regardless of race, creed, color, whatever. We need people into the tent to make our stories better. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of seeing, you know, the white guy's hero. I'm just like, I'm bored of it. I won't watch
Right.
those shows anymore. I won't watch those movies anymore. I've seen
Mhm.
it. There's nothing new that you can tell me that I
Right.
don't know. But what I haven't seen are 1,000 other stories that I feel like we should be telling.
Mhm.
So how do we get those people in? Well, we make we make the information accessible to everyone.
Mhm.
So that's the goal of this book, is just to tell everybody, hey,
Mhm.
here's some shortcuts. And I won't even say shortcuts, because it's not really shortcuts. They're more like, here's information about how we work inside Hollywood that you need to know, that's going to help you navigate the system
Mhm. Mhm.
about 30 to 40 to 50% better than
Right.
you do today. And some of the stuff might be, I don't know, uh, I'm not going to say rudimentary, because I don't think anything's rudimentary, but I think some of the stuff you might think, or you might have discerned in some sort of way, but you don't necessarily, no one's really confirmed it for you.
Right.
So there are chapters in there like laying the groundwork, which is, hey, here's how the business works, and this is how we used to look at content, and here's how we look at it now, and this is how executives program, and it's changing. So, so get on. It's going to be a wild ride until we figure out the streamers.
Mhm.
So this is what we're talking about today,
Right.
and then it also talks about what kind of material you need in order to come out strong,
Mhm.
how many kinds of material, what kind of material do you need in order to make it. um, I have a whole section on let's do lunch, and why we do lunch, and what the culture of the town is. And really, the town is like, uh, it's like Mayberry RFD. Everybody knows each other. I mean, we're only 2 degrees of separation. You go to
Right.
lunch with people, and suddenly you're best friends. So there's a there's a reason and a protocol for that, and so I talk a little bit about that to maybe help people a little bit more.
Mhm.
I talk about pitching. I talk about getting notes. I talk about not taking your notes, not taking yourself too seriously, and listening openly with about notes. You don't
Mhm.
have to take all the notes, but you should learn how to take them graciously, so that you can either decide that you're going to take them or not. But nobody wants to work with a person who's combative. So
Right.
how do you take yourself out of that situation? How do you
Mhm.
not take it personally?
Yeah.
Um,
Or a
we
tantrum
talk
about it.
exactly,
Which I've
and then
seen people do.
and it's hard. It's hard to take notes because you're personally invested in a project.
Mhm.
But sometimes you can divorce yourself. You can take them, listen to them, get them on paper.
Mhm.
Mitigate some of those high tension moments, and
Mhm.
then come back to them once you've been able to cool off a little bit,
Mhm.
and then decide, and listen to the note under the note, which is sometimes, I always say, I don't give notes anymore. I ask questions, because usually it's because the intent of the writer has not been fully realized.
Right. Right.
So it doesn't, for me to say you should do something, you should do X, this is not working.
Mhm.
It's usually not about me. It's about something's not clear.
Right.
So how do I help you get your idea more fully realized on the page, so that I don't have that question?
Mhm.
What do we need to do in order to work together to make sure that what your theme is coming through, what your character's goal is coming through?
Mhm.
So So I've actually changed, I would say, since I was a junior executive, giving terrible notes when I was, young and thought I knew everything, to now where I feel like I get my best work out of people when I am asking them questions and then trying to figure out, okay, if that's your intent, then
Mhm.
let's figure out how to realize that intent. And then
Yeah.
I've got chapters on the pilot script and what kinds of elements you might want to have in your pilot script, how to create your ensemble, how to give your hero a really great entrance, how to, have a really great opening scene,
Mhm.
how to pitch. There's a whole thing on pitching. So hopefully, and then there's also a piece about getting your first job in Hollywood
Mhm.
and debunking some of those myths
Mhm.
about getting in, and then giving some ideas about, here's some places to look.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's a little of all of that, I think, and um, a little bit of, here's how the executives think, and then here's how to, if your pitch is going south, here's how to rescue it.
Mm.
Here's how to warm up a cold room, and then it really does get into, here's some of the elements that you might need in order to come out strong if you're looking for writers, a career as a writer.
Mhm. Okay. I think those are amazing things that people really need to that they need to understand, because a lot of writers, when they're especially new coming in, they don't know what to expect. I've met a lot of writers that are they're usually very afraid of quote unquote Hollywood, and they always feel like, their material is going to get stolen, or so they
Right.
that creates a lot of distrust in studios and networks and executives and things like that. So I think
Sure.
I think your book would be really great for them to read and understand somebody like you who does know how to give kind notes and is able to guide them, in a way, and not
Right.
just give a note and say, "Oh, that doesn't work," and you're like, "Well, why?" and you don't get an answer as to why it doesn't work. So that's a
Right.
terrible note. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and let me speak to that piece,
Uh-huh.
because I think it's a really valuable thing that you just said about people coming in and they're afraid, and they're afraid of their idea being stolen. And because I do address that.
Mhm.
There is this, I think sometimes an emerging writer will come in and think, I've got a great idea, this idea should be the
Mhm.
thing. And they're focused on the idea as opposed to a career,
Mhm.
because an idea is an idea, and I guarantee you, if you are pitching me something, I've heard it. I can guarantee every single pitch that you are going to bring to me, I have heard.
Mhm.
So it's not about the idea. And if I said to 15 different writers, write something about uh a little bear who finds a banana in the woods, I don't know, whatever, they're going to come back with 15 different takes on it.
Mhm.
And some will be horror stories, and some will be, family stories, and even the ones that seem like they're similar on the surface will be different, because every person is different, every writer is different.
Right.
So being focused on one idea is completely, it's valid if that's what you want to do. You might be more of a feature writer than a TV writer, because your idea is immaterial. What you want to do is to build a community so that you can sell many ideas.
Mhm.
And if you only have one idea, you're not going to last long in this town.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to get to the place where you have enough cred
Mhm.
in where you've worked and who you've worked with and the kinds of things material that you're putting out there,
Mhm.
so that you are building a career and can sell. Well, you can get back in the room
Mhm.
over and over again, because they probably won't buy your idea, but
Mhm.
they might buy the next one or the next one or the next one, and they might bring you back for an open writing assignment. They might, whatever, you never know.
Mhm.
But if you focus on one idea, that's not necessarily going to build you for the long haul.
Mhm.
And we're in it for you're in it for 40 years, 50 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
however long. Hopefully till we all drop dead.
Mhm. Yes.
That's how long we're in it. So be focused on that, and be focused on building your craft,
Right.
because people will come to you if your craft is good,
Mhm.
not if your idea is good.
Yeah, that's very important, honing your craft, because I also see a lot of writers who, um, when we give notes, and there's somebody new, they're very hesitant to take the suggestion of reading a book on the craft or taking a class to like build their skills. Like I've had people actually like they just seem so angry about it and resistant about it, and they go, "How dare you?" kind of thing. Like I don't need to read a book, but
Right.
judge it from the work. You might want to.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always love for writers to always want to hone their craft, like no matter what level
Exactly.
you're at. I
And
think
it's
it's great.
fun. I welcome notes.
Mhm,
I love notes because
mhm,
if someone's giving me a note, that means that they're invested in my material, they're
mhm,
invested in me,
mhm,
and something is not clear about what I have given them.
mhm.
Because if it was, I would not have that note. So I don't have to always take it, but or I can always address it in a different way
Right.
than what they suggest. But I love the notes process because someone has read my material, and that's my goal. And it's all about me, right? It's all about
Right,
me.
right, right.
But
So
here's what I would say back to you
now,
though when you say people are resistant to reading a book.
mhm,
Not everybody, I think, works in the same way. And
mhm,
um, sometimes they do take offense. And I
mhm,
think in that case, either they're not ready.
mhm,
So it's up to you to take yourself out of the equation and say, you know what, they're going to find it on their own. I appreciate and I, hope that they do well, but I cannot be a part of this, and you step
mhm,
back. But there are also some amazing people out there who are coaching
mhm.
writers and I think building communities, and maybe it's offering them the opportunity to, or I should say the suggestion to get into a writers group so that they can work their material, because the writers group is so valuable. You need
Yeah.
constant feedback, and you need those deadlines. You need someone to say, all right, next Tuesday or next Thursday it's
Mhm,
your turn, and then it's going to be your turn 2 Thursdays from now, so
mhm,
that then you're hitting those deadlines.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's very important.
Exactly,
So,
but you have to get in a good one, because
right.
don't get notes from people who also aren't doing the kind of work that you're doing,
Mhm,
who aren't putting in the time.
mhm. True, very true. So now let's get into our kind of people. So
Yes,
when you first got involved with the show and you came into the as a writer, came in as a writer, did you start as a staff writer or did you start in a higher position?
I'm a staff writer,
Oh, okay.
so I'm at the bottom of the heap, and I love it. The people in the room don't ever, I don't think I ever have felt like low man on the totem pole. Everybody is very open.
Mhm,
But I love it because I'm learning from everyone in the room, and so whenever I'm given an assignment, and I check back in and I say, how did I do, and I look at the material that maybe I've turned in, and when they edit it or change something, I look at that and say, oh, that's how they've done it, and that's how they've rewritten me, which
mhm,
is fantastic. What a great way to learn how to do it better.
mhm,
So it's like I say, it's like Christmas every day. Every day that I go in the room, it's amazing. And I'm with a bunch of people who love content the same way that I do. They
mhm,
love talking about character in the same way that I do. So
mhm.
I feel like I found my tribe in
Oh,
this
great. That
in
is
this room.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the show. I've watched all the episodes so far, and
Good.
it's just amazing to look at because the cast is beautiful. They're talented. The fashion is amazing. I love
Yeah.
seeing the natural hair. That is like rare on television.
Good.
And then like the locations, like everything looks
Right.
beautiful. So tell us all about the show.
Well, there's lots of drama to come. And lots of fun. And I think if you've seen those episodes, you see that there's usually a big event. There's some glitz and glamour. There's a lot of relationship dynamics that are happening that will continue. And then you're right. There's a lot of locations that are just sort of very swanky.
Mhm.
The if for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's about this woman Angela Vaughn who comes to from from Boston into Martha's Vineyards, the community of Oak Bluffs and Martha's Vineyard, which is where the Black elite summer.
Hmm.
And she comes in realizing that her mother has left, her mother who's just passed away has left her an old boarding house, which she's going to turn into a retail store for her hair care product. And as she comes into this world and tries to bulldoze her way into this world, she also discovers that she is related to one of the wealthiest families on the island. And then chaos ensues. It's fantastic. It's really it's wonderful. It's about so many things. Um, it's about Black excellence.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of talk about race and class.
Hmm.
Um, but then there's just a lot of relationship things that are happening as well. So it's a fun show to work on. It's great because we get to, come up with really great, amazing storylines. Um, and the showrunner, Karen, just is just a phenomenal person. And the whole thing is, she leads this thing with such love and care and intention.
Hmm.
So hopefully everyone will stick with it, keep going. I would love to hear how people like it. Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram and, let me know if you love it. Because it's really fun to work on.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a chocolate dynasty for the new millennium.
Yes, that's great. That should be our
Yeah.
new tagline: "Chocolate Dynasty for the new millennium."
And yeah, because one thing that stood out to me, and I don't know if this may be like, a little controversial or not, but I just love the fact that all the lead cast members are like chocolate people. You
Yes,
don't
right,
normally see that a lot on network television or anything really.
right,
You have darker skin, beautiful Black people on the screen being showcased, and that's rare. So I think
right,
that's like a very something beautiful to look at.
right.
No,
Well,
yeah.
we come in all different shades, and I think it's been a long time coming. This kind of show, we've been waiting for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. So take us inside the writer's room.
Hmm. Well, we start every day at 10 a.m. and uh, gosh, a lot of it is making sure that the stories that we have set up, that they're ongoing, continuing, and that they're complicated,
Mm-hmm.
and monkey wrenches are thrown into situations that should be smooth sailing. Nothing's ever smooth sailing. But a lot of it is throwing some ideas around and seeing where we want to take the characters and batting ideas back and forth. And sometimes it's reworking some of the things that we might have started a thread and want to continue a thread, or and so it's like weaving some things in. But it's a lot of it's bouncing ideas off the wall every day. Um, and so that's basically it. But I've been on set for quite a while. So since July,
Oh wow.
I've been on set. I went to Martha's Vineyard for a couple of weeks in August, but for the most part, I've been here in Wilmington, North Carolina since July, which has been a lot of fun. So I'm on set. So I have been doing more set work
Mm-hmm.
than writer's room work lately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to watch every day. I get to watch the director's work, and I'm there in case anybody has questions about lines or motivations or where they came from. And so I get to work with the crew, and it's an amazing group of people. I have so much fun. Sometimes they're late nights, but it's all worth it.
Oh
So
wow.
it's great. Yeah, and I'm in lovely little Wilmington, which is a beach town,
Mm-hmm.
and so I go down to Wrightsville Beach on the weekends, and I have my little chair from the Big Lot store, and and I just spread out and work from there. So
Oh, that's
it's
pretty
been
cool.
great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't complain. I really can't. It's not a bad life.
So you guys are currently shooting as the show is airing?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
We're shooting episode 8 right now.
okay.
Um, And so yeah, it's happening. It's a moving train, and it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And how many episodes will there be?
12.
Oh
We
wow.
have a full 12. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
We
we
had
have quite a ways to go. I think we'll be shooting probably up until certainly the end of November, I think.
Mhm.
I think.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with games people play, all of our scripts are written already by the time
Mm,
we shot. Well, for this season, I'm not for sure. But yeah,
right.
it's like a little different setup.
Well, we had 6 episodes already written before we
Mhm.
went to pilots or
Oh,
till we went to production.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah, we had a little runway.
So, tell me what you're watching, what are you reading, what are you listening to, and how does that
Okay.
influence your writing?
It's funny. Up until a little bit ago, I was listening to quite a few Audible originals. I
Mhm.
can't tell you what the names of them are because it's been a minute. But I love to delve into anything that looks interesting. A lot of them are murder mysteries for some reason. What am I watching right now? Obviously Ted Lasso,
Mm.
Schmigadoon, like a lot of the Apple stuff I've really liked. What was I was watching something on, oh, I was watching Dickinson for the first time
Mm.
today, and I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised. But for the most part, I think I just started. Is it called Midnight Mass? I just started Midnight Mass. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it, but I did watch Squid Game.
Ah.
So I've been watching. I watch quite a few things. I
Mhm.
like to bounce around a little bit from the comedy to the drama, to the sci-fi stuff.
Mhm.
So uh, so pretty much, I think I've sampled a lot of things.
Mhm.
Um, I'm looking forward to the Umbrella Academy coming back. I loved that show.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I think it just depends. I think I do take a lot of recommendations from friends because
Mhm.
I don't have as much time as I used to. And
Mhm.
because I'm working on my own projects,
Oh.
I try to dip in and out and at least sample something
Mhm. Mhm.
just so that and then I also I'm a book of the month club person. So
Oh, okay.
and unfortunately I have not been home. So there's a stack of book of the month club
Mhm.
books that are in my home that I'd like to get to. But I'm also writing my own book. I'm writing my own novel. The thing that I decided that I had this idea in my head and I really wanted um, to get it out on paper. And the characters kept talking to me, and
Mhm.
I kept going, okay, 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 it's time for me to write this. And it did not feel like a movie, and it did not feel like a TV show. It
Mhm.
felt like a book. Like it needed to be uh, have more breadth to it.
Mhm.
But then I got into it, and it's like I'm at 30,000 words right now,
Oh
and
wow.
and I know that I haven't even scratched the surface of what I'd like to get into. But I did a whole full on outline. I did character breakdowns, and
Mhm.
then the characters, once I started to write it, decided that they had other plans. So I'm going loosely by the outline, and then it's sort of catch as catch can. But I
Oh,
love the process. It's great.
oh wow. So what is next for you in terms of other projects for TV and film?
Well, let's see. In terms of TV and film, I do have something that I just got an offer on, that we'll see how that goes. I don't know. Development is so, as we started talking about development hell, you
Right.
just never know.
You never know.
You can't count on anything until
Mhm.
until it's in the can.
True.
So I do have a couple other projects that I pitched I pitched a bunch of stuff before I got on staff. I pitched a bunch of stuff in February, and I pitched. It was a terrible, terrible week, but I pitched 6 things in 5 days,
Oh wow.
and it was awful. I think the pitches went well. The pitches went
Uh-huh.
well. I think and that's evidenced by the fact that a lot of things ended up moving forward. So
Mm.
two, three of the things that I pitched back then
Mm.
are moving forward in some sort of slow glacier like pace.
Mhm.
Um, which is why I'm like, the idea of writing a piece of material that I have control over,
Mhm.
you know, um, really fills me with much more excitement at this moment. And I'm looking forward to the holidays because I was like, oh, I'll have like a couple weeks and I'll just be able to write this novel
Hmm.
and see. And I think actually I'm going to post the progress of the novel online,
Oh,
not the
okay.
novel itself, but just the process of all of the the triumphs and the tragedies,
Hmm.
the,
Oh,
the
that'll be
tears,
exciting to follow.
the tears and the times I'm pulling my hair out,
Hmm.
and then the little tiny victories I'll get along the way, hopefully. So I think it's really going to be mostly focused on that.
Hmm.
With then we'll see how these other projects move
Hmm.
forward. One of
Hmm.
them, one of them's a comedy.
Hmm.
Actually, two are comedy, and then one's a drama, but it's a very joyful drama. And
Oh.
again, about the Black experience.
Hmm.
So hopefully showing different ways that we exist in this world that we
Hmm.
haven't seen before.
Yeah, we definitely need variety on that.
Right.
Because I always
Exactly.
hear a lot of people saying, they don't want to see any more Black stories that deal with poverty or drugs or gang violence and things like
Right.
that. And I think we need a variety. We do need a variety. I want to see
Right.
things that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think we're all done with the torture porn, and we're all done with 12 years a slave.
Mhm.
uh so I feel like, and yet, and we are so many things, so
Mhm.
why not show all those many things?
Right, right.
So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you on that.
I mean, like if someone does come out with a story, about something historic, dealing with us, if it's good, I'll look at it. But
But that
like,
can't be all of it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah, like give us a variety, give us something we haven't seen yet.
I think that's why I loved Scandal so much,
Mm,
and How to Get Away with Murder, because we were different. We were seen in a strong,
yeah,
interesting, multi-layered character format
yeah.
that, and I don't and we don't really have a whole lot of those. Again, I'm trying to think of the ones we might have All Rise, but I don't
Don't
really
get
see
started
those.
on Scandal. That's my favorite show ever.
I know, right? It had it's so brilliant. I think she did such a great job too with Bridgerton. That was so much
Oh
fun.
yeah, that was fun too.
Yes.
But the thing that I came to the conclusion with of Scandal is that after everything, it boiled down to the world was being run by a Black man and a Black woman.
Ah, yes, that's so true.
If you think about it, Daddy
That's
Pope and Olivia, they ran the world.
that's very true. Yeah, yeah. That's so true. And they
Yeah.
were so interesting and flawed,
Hmm.
and strong.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, even though they had their troubles,
Hmm. Hmm.
they were so infinitely compelling.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about Shonda's stories is that she's not going to give you a loving relationship like Leave It to Beaver type loving relationship. She's going to give you a beautiful family dynamic, but it's distorted.
Yes,
That's what
right.
I like about her.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's going to be fraught with complications for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So your book gives advice to writers of getting into the business, but what advice would you give people who are looking to be development executives?
A lot of that same information applies. And I
Mhm.
do think I walk the line a little bit because I was an executive and a writer, and I do flip back and forth in terms of my headspace.
Mhm.
But they're one and the same. They are just different sides of the same coin, really.
Mhm.
You still, as an executive, you still have to know your history of the written word. You still have to understand how it's incredibly important you understand story. You have to know and be a student of film and television and books, and just like you are as a writer. So all of the same stuff applies. As for an executive, your path is just going to be a little bit different. You're going to be, instead of trying to go into production or trying to get in a writer's room, your goal is going to be try to get an assistant position on a desk. Either you go through an agency or you go through a studio or a production company. There's the myth out there that people need agency experience. It drives me bananas when I hear that, because the agencies have historically been very racist. So
Mm.
let's just be clear that if 90% of the people who are in their mail rooms are white, then and they're icing out the people who are of color,
Mhm.
then saying that you need agency experience is a call for a white assistant.
Right.
Um, and it makes me crazy when I think about that.
Mhm.
They're also incredibly underpaid. So I say if you can get an agency and that's your thing, great, go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
Um, but there's so many other ways to get into the business. You can go through production. You can go through um, a production company.
Mhm.
You can go through a studio. You can go through a network. There are assistant positions everywhere.
Mhm.
What What's important is, and there are programs to sometimes get you in. The Page program at NBC, I think, is still running. Um, but the important thing is that you are going to get your first job and probably your second, your third, your fourth job through people that you know. It's going to be your network of people. So
Mhm.
go to every conference and meet people at the PGA events and the DGA events. And it doesn't matter what event you're going to go to, anything that's tangentially involved in Hollywood, those
Right.
are valuable connections. And then keep those connections up and meet more people and be genuinely interested in who they are and don't look at them as just your stepping stone to the next thing, because
Yeah.
you're going to know all of these people for again 40, 50, 60 years of your life. So you might as well start your friendships now and don't be a dick and be gracious and lovely to everybody. You don't have to be a doormat, but you do have to have relationships, because that's 100% of what's going to happen. You're going to get every job that you ever have in Hollywood through a hookup from a friend,
Mhm.
even the ones that seem like they're out of the blue. When you send your resume into some portal or something and you might get a call, it's rare. Sometimes you'll get the job. I've never seen it happen in my entire career. I've never seen it happen.
Mhm.
Those things are there because legally they have to offer the job to everyone. They have to be open, but they
Mhm.
never hire you. They
Yeah.
hire the person who is a friend of the person who is hiring, or who has been recommended by a friend of that person,
Yeah.
um, or is related. If you're lucky enough to be related, go through nepotism. But it never happens just as a blind call. There's always a connection somewhere. Someone's giving you a layup to a gig.
Mhm.
Um, so those are some of the things that we talk about in the book. There's also things like, organizations, lists of organizations. It's not comprehensive because that's not the book that I wanted to write. I don't
Mhm.
give you a list of places because that would just be ridiculous. But there are places to start. If you want to start as a PA, there's Manifest Works, there's Hollywood CPR, there's the mayor's project in LA, and then there's Made in New York and New York,
Mhm.
inner city filmmakers, streetlights. All of those are great ways into the PA process.
Mhm.
And those are relationships that you can build off of, because you're going to be sitting on set with people who can
Mhm.
help you get to the next level.
Right.
Production companies are great because they're small and they are usually really great ways to rise up fast because you really get your hands dirty on projects.
Mhm.
Studios are amazing because they usually hire a lot of people. There's a lot of turnover
Mhm.
and people are getting promoted, and then obviously networks. So there are ways to get into this business.
Mhm.
I think the best advice I would say is, even if you're just starting out, you're in college or
Mhm.
you're not in college. I don't care if you're going to college or you don't go to college, but you're building a resume
Mhm.
that shows that you have an interest in entertainment. So when I was in college, I actually might have been in high school. I was one of those ushers at the Geffen Theater. So I
Mhm.
would have put that on my resume. And then
Mhm.
every internship. So you're building a resume that says, I love content and this is what I did in order to show that.
Mhm.
Because that is then, not only does that help show your love of it, but somewhere someone could say, oh, I had seen tickets to the Geffen last year. What did you see? And that's a conversation starter.
Right.
Or
Mhm.
if you go to college that the hiring manager went to, that's a relationship. So all of those things are valuable. And
Mhm.
that resume has to tell the story of you and your love of content.
Mhm.
But I always say, look, if you want to get in this business and you're rabid to do it, you want to be a writer, you want to be a director, whatever it is, if you are committed to it,
Mm-hmm.
and you are not actively working against yourself. So by that I mean you're not being overly aggressive. You're not being belligerent. You're taking notes well. All those things that can ding you as a human being can ding you in Hollywood. But if you are that person who is essentially a decent person who's doing good work
Mm-hmm.
and you are making those connections, that's the recipe. You're going to be fine. You will have a career in entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the people who flame out, the people who are rude and obnoxious, or who don't do the work. They don't turn in their scripts. They don't. I should say they aren't writing their scripts regularly. They aren't making movies, short films on the regular. They aren't building their connections.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people who always say, "Oh, I want to," but then they never do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to be a little bit of a, a content junkie,
Mm-hmm.
um, and love it so much. I mean, I love, love, love this so much. I would not be able to do anything else.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
love it that much that like I said, I did it for free. I did two jobs most of the time, you know.
Oh
So you
wow.
got to love it, and then you'll be fine.
Now, do you think it's kind of the same path if someone wants to have their own production company? Because I see a lot of people that um, they want to they send their scripts in, but they still want to be attached to the project all the way through, the process, and they have their own like small little companies or whatever that they may have just started a couple days ago or something. Do you feel like that's the same path they need to follow as someone who wants to be a development executive or somebody who wants to be a writer?
Well, producing is a little bit of a funny thing, and I think that's why you see a lot of programs out there for writers and directors, but not a lot for producers. Every now and again, there's one at the PGA,
Mhm.
but they're very few and far between, and that's because producing is so amorphous.
Mhm.
So everybody can say they're a producer. Anybody can say they're a producer. If
Mhm.
you have a reason to be attached to a project, you're a producer.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that you necessarily bring anything valuable to it. You may or may not. You might just own the IP. You might own the book or the rights to something.
Mhm.
I think that for a producer, you have to either be the person who's getting the money together, or you've got the contacts, or a lot of producers come out of being an executive because they already have those contacts and they already know all the writers. They can package things a little bit more easily. They
Mhm.
have those relationships. If you're coming in off the street, let's just say you're living in a I don't know, in Des Moines. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I've never been to Des Moines. You're living in Des Moines and you want to be a producer, Hollywood producer. You have to realize that it is a very expensive game to play.
Mhm.
You don't get paid until something sells. So when I had my per deal at Paramount,
Mhm.
we first had an overall deal. Me and my partner had an overall deal. So everything got paid for. I got a salary, and then every time we sold something, we got an extra check.
Mhm.
And we had an office, and we had two assistants, and we had expense account, health insurance. We had everything. And eventually, about midway through the deal, after we had our show on the air and it went down, they put us on a housekeeping deal. And a
Mhm.
housekeeping deal just meant that we didn't get a salary, but every time we sold something, we get the bonus.
Mhm.
That's not a lot.
Oh wow.
That's not a lot of money. I think it might have been $10,000 and we split that. And if I brought in the project, I got a little bit more. But if he brought in the project, he got a little bit more. So, and imagine that we only sold 10 things that year, maybe, whatever,
Mhm.
not that many. So it was a really tough time. And that's being at a deal at Paramount. So imagine not being at a deal
Mhm.
and you still have to be the person who you have to FedEx something that's coming out of your own pocket. You don't have an assistant, that's person's coming out of your own pocket. Um, there's so many things that come with being a producer.
Mhm.
And then let's say you want to you're paying your lawyer to do your deals. That's a price too,
Right.
and you're trying to get some IP. So you're trying to negotiate, whether with a free option or so whatever you're trying to negotiate,
Mhm.
it's expensive. And so you have to then float yourself for as long as it's going to take until you get your feet wet,
Mhm.
which is why I think a better idea would be, if you want to be a producer, go work for a production company, go
Mhm.
learn, go build those relationships.
Mhm.
That's a way, then get that credibility. And eventually a production company will give you a credit.
Mhm.
So I have friends who work for production companies, and everything that they sell, they get their own credit.
Mhm.
And that builds up their portfolio and their resume.
Mhm.
That's a great way to do it. Otherwise, you will, if you're living in Des Moines, you're going to have to come up with some really great IP that's going to entice a writer to come on board of your with
Right.
your project.
Yes. Okay. Well, great advice. So,
Hopefully,
so where can the people find you online?
I'm at kellyedwards.co, I think. Hold on, let me just check. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram,
Mhm.
and I have my own website, which has links to everything. That's probably the easiest way. So, yeah, my website is kellyedwards.co. So it's KELLYEDWARDS.co. Almost everywhere I'm either kellyedwards.co or underscore co. So just look for one of those.
Okay, great.
And it would be, and I'm on LinkedIn too. I think LinkedIn is, I check my LinkedIn and my on the regular. And these days I'm checking my Twitter these days.
Mhm.
I Let me just say this. This is
Oh, go ahead.
interesting. So earlier this year, I I was terrible at social. I was the worst person in social. And I got there's this wonderful young woman named Jennifer Rodriguez who's helping me, and she's like, I can help you. She'd been reading for me, she'd been my assistant.
Mhm.
I had two assistants, so I have her and I have Lily. And so Jennifer's like, I can do your social for you. And I was like, okay, but I'm terrible at it. She goes, no, no problem. And I had on Twitter, I had 34 followers.
Mm.
I want to say 34. I think it might be 43 at the moment, but it was a terrible, and I'd had the same number. It hadn't
Mhm.
moved
Mhm.
for the decade that I had this Twitter account. Well, she goes in and she builds me a new Twitter account, a more professional one, the one that's, where I'm not trolling Marco Rubio. And it's now got 800 followers. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
and it was consistency. She's like, we're going to work on this together. And I actually find that how much I liked it and enjoy it, enjoy connecting with people I don't know. So, we usually try to, she nudges me if I haven't responded to people, but, people who's, said questions or whatever, it's really, really been a lot of fun. And I do find that there are people out there. I mean, there's so much talent out there,
Mhm.
and people are really just a couple steps away from getting in and being successful. I do say, if you stay the course, just stay the course, because
Right.
you will. My parents were dentists. I did not have any real connective tissue, and yet the only person that I really knew who was in the business was my friend Mark Kaplan, who was assisting Dolores Robinson the summer that I was coming out of college.
Oh, wow.
And Dolores needed an assistant for a month, and Mark was leaving the job, and there was another woman coming in a month later, and that was my first hookup. And from
Oh,
there,
wow.
it's been history. Every single time, it's been a hookup from a friend. So I was in the right place, the right time, with the right friend.
Mhm.
So anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, just stay the course. Yeah,
That's right.
a
Stay the
lot of
course.
people come in and they're like, I'm gonna give myself 1 year to make it. And I'm like, I
No.
want to give yourself a little more time than 1 year.
Exactly. Right. Right. If you think about it as the long haul, and
Hmm.
you really think about it as building a career over 40 years,
Hmm.
then 1 year would never make it.
Yeah.
You gotta just, and you can do any other side gig. Everybody should have a side hustle.
Hmm.
So you should have that side hustle and that dream, because eventually those things are going to flip, and your side hustle is going to become your dream, and your dream is going to be your side hustle.
Okay.
So
And one last question. So, for your company, do you take outside projects or do you only develop your own?
I don't take outside projects. Number one, I just don't have the time because I am on a show,
Mm-hmm.
and when I'm not on a show, I'm writing my book. So I kind of feel, and I even slowed down because, as I said before, doing 6 projects in 5 days, that's
Mm-hmm.
too much. It's just too much, even headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am best when I'm only working on 2 to 3 projects at a time, but not multiples. I
Mm-hmm.
think if I was just producing, I
Mm-hmm.
would absolutely have more projects. When I was working with Jonathan Axelrod, we had multiple projects. We had a slate of, 20 things going at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But as a writer, I only have so much bandwidth.
Right.
And being a writer on a show and on set,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to do my novel
Mm-hmm.
takes every ounce of me. Um, so I don't know that I would at this point. I think if I ended up, let's just say I had an overall deal and I had more, and I could hire somebody who could do my development, I would certainly take on other projects. But you know, the girl's just getting started, so not yet. I it's my goal. It's will be a dream. So
Mm-hmm.
check in with me in like 5 years and let's see where we are.
Will do. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful time talking with you, and I'm sure the listeners will get a wealth of information just from the interview alone. But you guys go out there and get her book because I'm sure it's chock full of even more interesting things.
Good. Well, I thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. You're a
Yeah.
wonderful interviewer.
Oh,
And
thank
yeah, I think too, if people buy the book and they do have other questions,
you. Mhm.
hit me up on the social. I will answer back. So
Wow.
um I definitely think, like I said, the goal is to open the doors.
Mhm.
That's what we did at HBO. That's what we did I did it at NBC Universal. We
Mhm.
need more people, not less. Please be courageous, and if this is something that you love,
Mhm.
come
Mhm.
to the party. We're waiting for you.
Yes, definitely come to the party.
Right.
All right.
Thanks
Well,
so
thank
much.
you so much.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time to tune in to the Wordy Girl Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to check out my blog at www.wordygirlent.com. That's WORDYGIRLENT.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at WordyGirlENT and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/WordyGirlENT. And always remember, it all begins with a single word. So what are you waiting for? Go write.